What's up, everyone? This is Xarian. This is a post-commentary of my Yu-Gi-Oh! Dark Duel Stories speedrun in 3 hours, 2 minutes, 43 seconds. This is the world record as of March 30th, 2018. So to start off, this commentary will be pretty general in discussing the run. There isn't a lot of value to dissecting every single duel. The duels are pretty repetitive and luck-based, and once you understand the general context of the game, you'll be able to figure out which duels went well, which duels were a bit unlucky just by watching. I'll get to more of that once I finish explaining how this game works. So the rules for this game are different than the popular trading card game. They actually precede the trading card game because this is Duel Monsters 3 in Japan, and Duel Monsters 1 and 2 are similar rules, and they came before it, and that was based on the manga Game of Duel Monsters. The rules are pretty similar to the PS1 game Forbidden Memories, which more people are familiar with. It's actually the most popular Yu-Gi-Oh! Speedrun, but there are some differences. There's 800 cards in this game. Most of them are normal monster cards. There's a few effect monsters and some magics and traps. These cards can also be found in the TCG, but they have more complex effects there, generally. So I'm starting the run by putting in passwords for some of the best cards in the game. Each card has an 8-digit code, and that can be found in the bottom right corner of its real trading card. So you enter those, and then they go to your trunk in the game. There's no cost for doing this, like it doesn't take a certain number of star chips like it does in FM. Each card does have a cost to put in your deck. I'll talk about that more later. For now, I'll just cover the duel rules. They're actually pretty simple compared to the TCG. You have 40 cards in your deck, no more, no less. You start with 5 cards in your hand. You draw 1 each turn. You can have no more than 5 in your hand at a time. Start at 8,000 life points, and then you win when your opponent's life points hit 0, or when you draw all 5 cards of Exodia. But that never happens. Just like the TCG, you can summon 1 monster per turn and put it in face-up attack or face-down defense position. 5 to 6 star monsters require 1 tribute, and 7 to 8 star monsters require 2, but I don't use any of those. The AI will use some of them, however. And then the battle system is actually identical except for one important difference, and that's that a monster's alignment is relevant. So the alignment system is like rock, paper, scissors, same system that's featured in FM. There's 2 sets of alignments, and one of them got Shadow, which beats Light, which beats Fiend, which beats Dreams, which beats Shadow. And then the other set, Forest beats Wind, which beats Earth, which beats Thunder, which beats Aqua, which beats Pyro, which beats Forest. So it's kind of similar to Pokemon as well. Now in FM, an alignment advantage would boost your attack by 500 or your defense by 500 if you were in defense mode. But in this game, you just automatically destroy the monster with an inferior alignment. So Kuriboh beats Blue Eyes White Dragon, and Flame Viper beats Perfectly Ultimate Great Moth, etc. It's kind of broken. There's also a Divine alignment that's neutral against everything, and that's reserved for ritual monsters such as Cosmo Queen. Another important difference from FM is that the fusion system is nerfed considerably. If you make a fusion in your hand, you can't summon the fused monster until the next turn, and if you make a fusion with the monster on the field, you can't attack with it until the next turn. So you can only fuse 2 cards together at once instead of fusing your entire hand, and you can't just summon twin-headed Thunder Dragons all the time. Having said that, the game is a lot easier than FM, where you don't need to bring out really high attack monsters to win, because of the tribute system. So on to effect monsters. There are that many monsters with an effect, but those that do have it, you have to activate it manually. No continuous effects like Jinzo in the trading card game. So as an example, I often use the effect monster Fiend's Hand in this run, Witch's Apprentice here, that's another one. So Fiend's Hand's effect destroys itself and its the opponent's highest attack monster. So that can be very useful in both a winning and a losing position in the run. You can only activate a monster's effect while it is face down, So either you summon it and use the effect immediately, or you can set it and then use the effect at any point before it gets attacked, because it remains face down. And once an effect is activated, a monster can't attack that turn. So effect monsters are pretty limited. Last thing, magics and traps. Magics cards must be activated manually, and they don't have continuous effects, with the one annoying exception being Swords of Revealing Light. Here I'm doing my first deck edit, so I'm putting in the cards that I just entered, taking out some of the weaker ones. You see the 400 there at the top, that's my dual deck capacity, which I'll talk about in a sec. But these duels against Tristan are all pretty easy. I use fusions a lot. Anyway, so magic cards, most of them are like equips or monster removal cards. So equips just boost different monsters' attack by 500 points. For example, Insect Armor will boost the power of Bug-type monsters, and Dark Energy boosts most monsters with a Shadow or a Fiend alignment. And then there's monster removals like Raigeki, which just destroys all opposing monsters, or Last Day of Witch, which destroys all opposing spellcaster monsters. Now traps, you see I've set a trap here. These are very useful throughout the game. They're the most simplified cards relative to the TCG, and it's probably just because of the layout on the Game Boy screen. The space for the trap there in the bottom left, I guess that's the only place they could fit traps. Everything else they needed. So you can only set one trap at a time, and it only lasts for a turn, so if the opponent doesn't run into your trap, then it's just wasted. You don't ever activate them manually, it's just they're triggered by an attack, or if a certain magic card like an equip is used, then reverse trap will decrease their attack instead of boost it. So yeah, that's everything about the basics of the game. Quite a few differences from the TCG. So now I've started dueling here. I'm gonna put in more passwords later, but I don't put them all in at the beginning, because if I end up resetting here because of bad luck, then it would have just been a waste of time. So you progress in this game by beating each duelist 5 times. Once you've beaten all of the duelists in a tier 5 times, so this tier is Tristan, Joey, Mai, Mako, and Yugi, then you can advance to the next tier, and there's 4 tiers in total, plus a 5th one that unlocks after the credits. We don't do that one in the speedrun. So a total of 16 duelists in this run, and 80 duels. So I do Tristan 5 times to start. Tristan is the easiest. It's actually impossible to lose to him. They designed him that way. Every tier 1 duelist is pretty easy. You'll usually get like one bad duel, but it's almost impossible to lose. And it's kind of unfortunate because the late game is where there's the most variance, and you've just got to get through this in a slow early game before you get to that part and see whether your run is actually good. Yeah, you see a monster's alignment, you see Fiend underneath Dragon Zombie. The monster's alignment won't show up during battle like that unless it's relevant. The Clone Zombie is Fiend, Lego is Forest. Wretched Ghost is Shadow. Anyway, generally you want to be making like one fusion here against Tristan. In this duel I ended up getting by without fusions because I drew my strongest monsters. Some of my decisions in the early game were a bit questionable, but it doesn't matter that much. It's kind of hard to make a major error at this point. Alright, so while I'm getting through Tristan here, I can talk about deck building strategies. As I said before, that 400 number at the top of my deck screen, that's my deck capacity. So each card in this game has a cost, and that matters for deck capacity and duelist level. So your duelist level starts at 15, and it goes up by 1.6 rounded down after every duel. So after one duel, it's 16. After two duels, it's 18, etc. If a card's cost exceeds your duelist level, then you can't put it in. So since there are only 80 duels on the run, you're never going to be able to add cards with a maximum cost of 255, like Raigeki or some of the stronger monsters that aren't even that good. And that's fine because we don't have the deck capacity for those anyway. 255, that's more than half the current deck capacity. 400 to start, you have 40 cards on average, that's just a cost of 10 per card, so you're going to have a lot of weak monsters at the start. A cost is just going to be a monster's attack plus its defense divided by 100, so like Dragon Zombie is 1600 attack, 0 defense, so the cost is 16. It's pretty efficient since you don't need its defense to be anything, really. And then deck capacity goes up by 5 after every completed duel, losses included. Sometimes it's worth taking a loss for a +5, but it doesn't matter that much. If you're going to lose a duel, it's often better to just reset rather than waiting for the duel to complete, because the game auto-saves after every action, every added card, every duel result. You don't actually have to manually save. So yeah, as I said before, you're fusing a lot here, and that's kind of how you get around your deck capacity being so low, is you can just combine two 500 attack monsters to make like a 1300 attack. And a lot of the passwords that I entered before dueling Tristan here were for easily fusible monsters, such as dragons and females. So cards like Magician of Faith, those are really useful because they have 3 advantages. They've got a low cost, so Magician of Faith's cost is 7. They're easily fusible, and they have a good alignment for the mid to late game, and despite having basically no attack and defense, they can beat stronger monsters that have the alignment disadvantage. Relinquished is an effect monster, and fortunately, the AI never activates monster effects in this game, so even though Tristan has this 255 cost OP effect monster and Relinquished, he never uses it as anything more than like a Thousand Eyes Idol. So I'll discuss the deck edits more in depth as I get through the run. I'm going to be doing deck edits every like 4 duels or so. Obviously I'm going to be adding stronger cards as my duelist level and deck capacity increase, and that'll speed up the duels a bit, but my opponents will have stronger cards once I reach tier 2 and 3, especially tier 3, so it's more likely to have a really bad duel or just to lose one. Yeah, the card part system is really cool in this game. You can get like 20 cost, 2000 attack, 2000 defense monsters, but which card drops you get are random, and the game doesn't tell you which card parts you get. You actually have to go in and check. Now, there might be some way to manipulate that, and that would be really cool, but we haven't figured it out yet. Alright, so dueling strategies. It's kind of the fun part of this. But it actually ends up being pretty simple, like the fastest ways to win duels. With the exception of the early game where you're relying on fusions because of your low deck capacity, the main strategy is just summoning 2 to 3 high attack monsters, which we call beat sticks, and just brute forcing your way to victory. A lot of duels are just like 5 direct attacks from beat sticks, or 4 if you draw Jirai Gumo, which has 2200 attack, and then an 1800 attack beat stick, because that's 22 plus 1800 plus 2200 plus 1800 is exactly 8000. You can also speed up duels by setting traps, like I did here, and I did that in the first duel. So here I think this was a misplay. I fused even though Dragon Zombie is already pretty big, since that Ancient Jar was, only 400 attack, but yeah, I could have just attacked with Ancient Jar every turn and attacked with the Tiger Axe and the Dragon Zombie. But yeah, traps will allow you to set something with really weak defense and just protect it, and that will bait the opponent into attacking, and then you can just have a clear field to attack directly next turn. Traps are also really low cost, so they're some of the best cards in the game. If a trap can save you a turn or save you an attack, it's It's pretty nice because a turn is like 8 seconds, an attack is about 5 seconds. So Tristan is one of the duelists where you don't have to worry too much about alignment. He has a lot of forest and fiend monsters, which are strong against wind and dreams, and you actually don't have any dreams monsters in your deck at this point. And the only wind monsters you have are dragons that you're often just fusing with other monsters. But these next duels against Joey and Yugi, you have to be very careful with attacking with your beat sticks because of the alignment system. So Jirai Gumo right there, that's like the best card in the game. Unfortunately, Joey and Yugi both run 3 copies of Flame Viper. Flame Viper's a Pyro, Jirai Gumo's Forest, so you just lose there. So you want to avoid attacking a face-down monster with Jirai unless you know that it's not Flame Viper. I'll talk more later about how you can know what cards your opponent plays, or at least narrow it down. Of course, you can use traps if you're anticipating the opponent attacking with an alignment advantage. Just set a trap and that'll take care of it, and that can actually speed things up. But your opponent doesn't have the AI. They're not smart enough to recognize, like, oh, he has a forest monster, so now I'll play my Pyro. They just play their strongest card. So setting a trap doesn't always work. A lot of strategies in this game are just knowing your opponent's deck. So here I know that 600 defense is enough to protect against all of Joey's monsters, unless he plays like Sogen and Mountain Warrior. So I put Morphing Jar in defense, and then Trap takes care of the first monster, and then the second monster can't get over me. And this just speeds up the duel because you end up doing more damage attacking his face-up attack monster instead of face-down defense. But you wouldn't want to use that strategy against like Yugi because he can tribute for Dark Magician Girl. And some of your traps are not big enough. So there we go with the Flame Viper troll. Every run has to deal with that. Usually, there I fused for a forest monster in Ushioni, which is almost as big as Jirai Gumo, which would have sped up the duel considerably if he didn't run over it. Just unlucky. Joey has quite a few monsters stronger than Flame Viper, so he wasn't very likely to play it there. Yeah, I do end up making a few mistakes this run where I carelessly attack something, and it's hard to play optimally for 80 duels because your hands are just, they can be anything, they're completely random, and you can't see your whole hand at once, so I think this duel I just got unlucky, but there are quite a few duels in Tier 1 where I could have done something slightly better, and a few duels later as well. So I guess the last major thing to discuss is Duelist AI, which I already touched on a little bit. Every duelist seems to have the same AI. It doesn't check for who you're dueling, it just checks for what cards the opponent has. So that simplifies the learning process. You don't have to adapt your strategies for different AIs just for different decks. None of the duelists have traps, which is nice. I think they're programmed to use traps effectively, but none of the duelists have them in their decks, so you don't have to worry about that. And most duelists don't have that many magic cards either, or they have like really terrible magics like Red Medicine and Hinatama and Sparks. So the most relevant AI is just what monster are they going to summon or set. If they set, then you can't tell what it is, so you have to make an educated guess. Getting pretty good drops here in the early game. There's one duel coming up that goes absolutely horribly, but other than that, this all goes pretty well. So there's Sparks. Minus 50 life points. It just wastes time. Field spells as well. Like, yeah, they're generally not a threat when they play field spells, but it's like 5 seconds of text, so you can sometimes, if they just like equip and use a field spell and use Sparks or Red Medicine, you just lose like 20 seconds to text. Anyway, so the AI for what card they play, what monster they summon, As I said before, it's just the strongest monster they have, so that's the monster with the highest combined attack and defense. It doesn't just look at attack like Forbidden Memories. Now, if there are any ties, so let's say that, so this is Joey, let's say that he has three of those, three air marmots, and then he plays that card from the leftmost slot, then that means he doesn't have any more of those, because all ties are broken by playing from the rightmost slot. So that's... I learned that recently, and it takes some getting used to, but you can use that rather effectively. It's true of magic cards as well, so like the later duelists that have 3 copies of Raigeki, if they use Raigeki from the leftmost slot, then you know they don't have any others, so if they play one, then that means they top-decked it. And you can tell whether they top-deck, because the order of their cards in their hand never gets scrambled. So if the card that they played on the previous turn, they play from that slot again, you know they top-decked it, so then you don't have information about the card based on what they played the previous turn. So for this duel, my deck capacity just reached, my duelist level just reached 26, and the Sea Snake and 7 Colored Fish cards have 26 cost, since it's 1800 plus 800 divided by 100, so I can throw those in. And then the duel after this, I can talk about a deck building technique, I guess you can call it, because I'm going to do a big edit after this, where I intentionally put in cards that like do nothing just so that I can have room for stronger cards. Last note on AI though is that the AI will tribute if it can, unless it's like sacrificing an existing tribute monster for another one. It generally won't do that. So for the opponents that have a lot of tribute monsters, you often want to play around a tribute summon if you get into a bad situation or certain predictable situations. Especially if you can set a monster that has an alignment advantage over that tribute summon. So I do that at least once later in the run, and when you predict well, it can speed things up considerably. Yeah, Muka Muka is... I've been watching Duelist of the Roses runs, and it's really good in that game with its effect, and then the real-life TCG. I think I've used that in some of the games. It's not a very good card in the actual competitive TCG, but yeah, a lot of cards that have effects in the regular format do not in this game. But then there's some cards that have effects in this game that don't in real life. Okay, so the set of passwords I'm putting in here is a combination of really strong beat sticks, like this card, Gemini Elf, and what I call low-cost fillers. So a low-cost filler is a monster that has 0, 1, or 2 cost, generally, and usually it's pretty useless. There aren't any, like, 0 cost cards that are really good. So the purpose of the card is just to make space for stronger cards. Like, you'd much rather have a really strong card like Gemini Elf, and then a weak card like that, Dark Eyes Illusionist, than to have like 2 1000 attack cards. It's just more efficient. So here we put in 2 0-cost Dreams monsters. Now the Dreams alignment is very useful for a few duelists later, but generally those cards are just fillers, and this card is entirely a filler, Fake Trap. It does absolutely nothing. In fact, sometimes it's bad because traps, they look different in your hand after you've summoned a monster, because the game still lets you use a trap, but it doesn't let you use a monster, so it's like, oh, I have a trap, wait, is that... Oh no, it's just Fake Trap, and you just waste time checking it, but... yeah, combination of really strong monsters and low-cost fillers allows us to more efficiently get through the first 2 tiers especially. And the way that I've routed this game is, it's pretty similar to other people, but I tend to to do even more of this, like, alternating low-cost fillers with beat sticks. Really, the way to go fast in this game is to draw beat sticks. Trying to be cute with fusions and, you know, winning via attribute. There's some situations where it's really good, but like this duel, just like draw 2 beat sticks and set a trap, and then I just win in 2 turns. Like, that's so good. You want to get as many duels like this as you can, and sometimes, you know, you might lose if you don't have enough monster removal, or if you didn't make a fusion that you could have made, but that's a risk that is worth taking so that you can get really fast duels like this. Yeah, this is the 4 attack duel I mentioned before. Jirai plus an 1800 or higher. So yeah, at this point, the run is going quite well. The PB that I'm running against here, you see that I have 2 columns in my splits. One of them is running against PB, and one of them is running against the world record, which was actually the English version world record. Figure it was better to compare against that than Ninja's Japanese time, which has, you know, various differences in text. My PB was actually pretty lucky in the early game, so to be 31 seconds ahead here is quite good. So there's a very common play there, where I set a monster that I expect to have an alignment advantage, because Joey plays a lot of Earth monsters. And then since he doesn't know that I have a wind monster set, he'll just ram into it, and then the next turn I can just fuse to make the 2000 attack Stone D. This duel was really cool, because I drew a trap there when I needed it, and this allowed me to bait him into attacking again, and then I could keep Hourglass hidden, and then use its effect next turn when Stone D was ready to attack, so then I just do massive damage here. But it might not have been correct to do this, because I needed to draw that trap. Yeah, lots of fun stuff that you can do with traps. Now this Joey split has gone pretty well, but Joey can play Swordsman of Landstar, which is a 1200 defense light monster, so like that destroys my Fiend monsters, of which I have quite a few. And he can play Mountain Warrior, which we saw earlier, but he put it in attack mode. But when he leads that in defense, it's got 1000 defense or 1300 in Meadow. Yeah, Hourglass is pretty cool. It's kind of slow to use its effect, but it can help you in quite a few places. It also can fuse, although it's pretty rare that that's useful. Yeah, the cost for its effect is 1000 life points, and you boost all your monsters by... See, there's the fake trap troll. you boost all your monsters by 500. I actually forgot until recently that it even had a cost of 1000 life points, because you so rarely get your life points low. Yeah, it's really good. I've drawn Dragon Zombie quite a bit in the early game. Very efficient. Everything goes really well until Yugi 3, and then we can talk about the reason that Yugi is a pretty big troll sometimes. A good time for the first tier using my route is like sub 57 minutes. Watto's route and Ninja's route just put all of the passwords in at the start and didn't delay any of them until tier 2, so then they were looking at about an hour being a good time. So all of the runs that I've had have been better than that, but that's because I delay, 11 or 10 passwords until tier 2. And each password is about 14 seconds to enter. But it's so silly because you get a really good tier 1 and then just like within a span of like 5 to 10 minutes. In Tier 3, you lose all of the time you saved. Tier 3 is really all that matters. So yeah, like here's an example where I can't use the strat where I set a trap and then I put the monster into defense to do more damage because there's the risk of him playing Dark Magician Girl. I could have done it there because I had Invisible Wire, but if you have a trap that, like Bear Trap only kills monsters with 1500 attack or less, you can't do it. Yeah, Tier 2 can be very frustrating as well. This run did not have this run had a terrible Tier 2, right? Yeah. Just Seeker. I hate doing Seeker second because you just so often don't draw what you need to beat him, but I mean, it's even if you do him last, he's gonna be a problem. It's really hard to play optimally against Seeker. The Fiend's Hand's effect is nice. It saves a little bit of time over attacking, I think. It gets really close, depends on how fast your inputs are. But the nice thing is you don't have to worry about what you're attacking, whether it has an alignment advantage or it has too much defense. You can just kill it no matter what. Okay, so this next duel I can talk about a bit, but first I put in some passwords, because I've got more deck capacity now to add them. So there's quite a few menus in the early game, passwords and then putting in the cards that you entered, and I spent quite a bit of time practicing these, and actually did a number to my hands. Had to take a break for a couple of days after I went too hard. It's easier to do this on keyboard than console. I tried doing this with GameCube controller, and it was like, I could do it, but it was losing, you know, quite a bit of time, and I don't know what I'm gonna do about that eventually, because I would like to run this game on console, but GameCube D-pad is quite a bit slower than keyboard, and you have to, like, use your thumb, which wears out faster. I'll just quickly note there that I put in Battleox, and I'm not quite sure why that card got removed. That was in, like, one of the earlier routes, like, putting in Battleox early, but then we went away from that. And so I put it back in because I realized it was, like, better than Neo for just about everything, and Battleox has been really useful on, like, Mai and Weevil, and, also, like, Ishizu sometimes. Then I put in Neo later as well. Alright, so this is low light of the run, perhaps. So I don't draw very well here. I do have the ability to make Mystical Sand, which is female plus rock, but that's a 1 tribute monster, so I'd like to get something on the field and just fuse with it on the field. Unfortunately, he beats me by alignment here, so I can't do that. Now, I could have, like, played Drillbug in attack mode and then sacrificed it for Mystical Sand, but I was just hoping he wouldn't play a Shadow. He has nothing over 400 attack, so if he beat me there, it had to be by alignment. But yeah, it didn't work out. And then from here, I probably messed up, but there really wasn't a good way to do this duel from here. I didn't have anything really good in my hand. I could have tried to fuse, I think, at some point here. But since you don't really want to be fusing after the first turn, because it's slow. I just went for this because, I don't know how the life points would have worked out, but this, you know, 1600 and 1200 can get through the duel pretty quickly. Unfortunately, when you use Hourglass's effect, then it triggers Dark Hole. Now, I was going to trigger Dark Hole anyway, because he'll use it when you have 3 or more monsters. So, like, there was really no way of having this duel go quickly, other than just going faster with the inputs. I think there was the biggest mistake. I should have just fused something, but I was like, fuck, I'm gonna have to reset this good start, because I got really bad Dark Hole luck. But yeah, you have to be very careful with using Hourglass here, because it triggers Dark Hole. Sometimes you just want to do everything you can to avoid Dark Hole. So just have 2 monsters on the field, and no hourglass boosts, and just, even though it's an extra turn, just keep 2 monsters on the field. The 3rd one will trigger Dark Hole, because he has 2 Dark Holes. Joey has 1. You can generally risk that. Or if it's like really late in a duel, you can just risk, yeah, if you get Dark Hole and it's just 1 extra turn instead of like 3. Yeah, this is a duel that would have been, you know, fine, and this is why it, like, isn't gonna be fine against Yugi, because he just Dark Holes me again. 1 card left, and it's a 2nd Dark Hole, but against another duelist, it would have been alright. And, like, this is just the worst part. It's like, I really don't want to fuse now, but I have nothing in my hand that's strong, and it's just... ugh. But yeah, something that I've found in running this game and seeing others run it is that you usually will get 1 duel like this. Usually about 1. Sometimes 2, or, you know, any more than that, you're probably resetting. And, you know, you just have to deal with it. There's too many duels to expect to get the perfect, you know, beat stick duels every time. So, like, yeah, this is just a disaster. Like, I'm attacking him with Petite Dragon, which is the wind alignment, and he has forest monsters. Like, I just don't have anything good here, because I didn't fuse, because I wasn't expecting to get double Dark Hole. Yeah, Ninja, losses don't kill runs, which is why I don't have too much of an issue with, like, Rex and Weevil. If you lose there, or if you get trolled there, it's usually, like, a turn 1 double equip. Like, that happened to me once in this run. I just got a double equip, couldn't get over it, reset, lose less than a minute. Slow duels, yeah, it's... slow duels into a loss, that's the worst. That's what killed my previous run. So yeah, I lose 2 minutes on 1 duel. Because of Dark Hole, and bad draws, and some mistakes. But now we get... this is very standard. Once you've got a few beat sticks in the deck, you get a lot of duels like this, where you open with 2 beat sticks, and then you just attack with them. It's really easy. Something that I didn't mention before, and maybe it was obvious, is that, you can attack before summoning, because there are no phases in this game, so often it's just fewer inputs, or it's just useful for information to attack with the card that you already have on the field, rather than summoning first. Okay, that is used quite a bit. So yeah, here I do risk Dark Hole by playing the 3rd monster, but since I'm in a pretty good position anyway, and he's only, like, what is it, 20 or 25% to use Dark Hole, it's worth the risk. It saves, like, 8 seconds if you play the 3rd monster, usually. So yeah, this is where, if I were streaming this run, it would be, you would see the downside to running this game. Of course, when I'm doing a commentary and explaining mechanics and how you can just password all of these OP cards, it seems pretty cool, but when you get duels like that and you're 2 minutes behind and then you've got to play for another however many duels before the run is good again, it can be very tilting. And because the biggest RNG is later in the run, especially tier 3, you just have to play this out instead of resetting every time you get bad luck. So I think it happened twice in this run where I was very close to resetting. The first was after that Yugi 3 duel, and the second is against Seeker in tier 2. And of course this run ends up finishing 6 minutes faster than the official record, the Japanese record, and 8 minutes faster than the English record. So, that seems pretty silly that I was thinking about resetting, but that's just how this game goes. You never know how good your run is going to be, but it certainly feels like it's terrible when you get a duel like that, like I got against Yugi. So yeah, I used the risky 3 monster strat here again. and it works out. But still, a 12-minute Yugi is pretty terrible. I'm consistently losing time to world records since I am putting in passwords throughout the run. Alright, so quick note on the order of Tier 1 here. Tristan is the easiest. He plays 300 attack monsters, 300 defense. Joey and Yugi are pretty comparable. Mako has stronger monsters than those two, and on average stronger monsters than Mai. But he's really, really straightforward if you have enough beat sticks. So Mako is by far the most chill part of the run. You're just summoning beat sticks and you win. And if you get unlucky, then one fusion is usually good enough. I always kind of just take a deep breath when I get to Mako after the stressful start with the password inputs and dark holes. This guy has Umi and equips, so he can make, what is it? He can make a 1910 attack, that's the best. Or wait. No, he can make a 1910 defense, or a 17-something attack, so it's possible to lose, or it's possible to have a slow duel, but most of the time you're gonna be fine. And if he doesn't play his equips, he's pretty weak. So I think Mako is intended to be like the hardest Tier 1 duelist, but he's really not. Usually you're gonna be sub 10 minutes against this guy. But, for some reason, the original route of this game, which I used for my first few runs like 2 years ago, did Mai second. And I'm obviously doing her last here. So Mai is a bit of an interesting duelist that we can talk about more when we get to her. But yeah, there's not a whole lot you can do as far as routing this game. It's mostly just, you know, playing duels well and hoping for good luck. I mean, there is routing with your deck, but that's a bit of a different type of routing. But the order that you fight the duelist in can be relevant. And so the order that is done in all 3 tiers is done with a purpose. The 4th tier is just one duelist. Dark Knight. Yeah, Ninja, so Beautiful Headhuntress is a card that it's kind of a borderline card. I think Watto's route, he has a note about it, but he doesn't actually password it in. And so when I came back to this game, I was kind of following his route, so I went without it. But then I wanted to have more beat sticks than he did, so I added Rogue Doll, and then I realized that light monsters are not actually that good. So I switched to Headhuntress, which is a similar cost, but it's a better alignment in Shadow, and I found it to be really useful. Like, he just gets over all of Kaiba's and Piseto's sets. You can fuse with it, although it's almost never useful. Alright, so here is the first good drop of the run. And I think... yeah, so I wasn't sure what I was going to do about this drop, so I just went straight into the duel. So this is a good time for me to talk about drops. Since you're passwording a lot of cards in this run, and there's no cost to entering passwords, 14 seconds of time, but you don't actually have to waste any resources in the game, you can rely heavily on passwords and not on drops, and just do the whole run without adding any drops and still get a really good time. But because there are 80 duels, you generally get a few good drops, and it is optimal to have some flexibility for them. But the tricky part about this, well, there's 2 tricky parts. Number 1 is that your deck capacity doesn't always allow it. Like, you have the route specifically made for no drops, and then you get a drop, like Hourglass, and it's like, okay, I have to remove something for that, so I want to remove my weakest card, but I don't have space for that if I do that, so I have to remove a stronger card, or I have to rearrange a bunch of things. So what I've ended up doing for Hourglass, which is not optimal, but it works, is I remove Morphing Jar, because Morphing Jar has the same cost, and I don't have to mess around with anything. other than the order of the cards in my deck, so I just have to make a note that like it's in a slightly different order because I removed Morphing Chart earlier, and then Hourglass is at the end. But there are some times, such as later in this run, when I get a couple of really good drops, when you just have to improvise because the cards that you get don't have costs that are like equal to something that you would want to remove. And that's really, really hard to do. I mean, it's not hard to do, but it's hard to do without taking a second to think about it, and in a speedrun you really don't want to do that. So here I was doing an edit anyway to put in Battle Ox. So I combined this edit with the one for Hourglass, and then I forgot what Hourglass's number was, so I just sorted the cards by attack and went and got it this way. But it's... I end up adding Hourglass later in the run, like I take it out, and then I add it back, and then I remembered that it was 229. Yeah, Dark Elf is so good. Dark Elf is one of my favorite cards, I just love it, and it doesn't have any cost in this game like in the TCG, so... Shadow is the best type, 2000 attack, gets over a lot. You can also fuse for it by combining Dancing Elf with a with a shadow monster that isn't female. Like, sadly, you can't combine a Dancing Elf with Witch's Apprentice to make Dark Elf like you can in Forbidden Memories, but you can combine it with, confuse it with Wretched Ghost. Yeah, I don't think Dancing Elf has been used like at all this run, but Dancing Elf is awesome. That's another card I really like, because it fuses with so much, and it's very low cost. Oh wait, I do use Dancing Elf for alignment, but I don't think I fuse effectively with it. Yeah, it's just really hard in general to route around your deck capacity in this game, because anytime you want to change something, whether that's changing mid-run because of a drop, or just changing your base route, then you have to revisit everything. Like, alright, I want to add, you know, I want to add a beat stick one duel earlier here, so I need to make more room for it, but then that means later I have more room, so that, you know, it's hard to explain. It's really, really difficult to optimize the routing of your deck. It's not difficult to have a general idea of, alright, I'm gonna just add efficient beat sticks, you know, high attack, low defense, and I'm gonna add low cost fillers, and then I'm gonna add monster removal cards like Fiend's Hand and to get over walls, and... So yeah, here I was going for... What was I going for here? I remember if I got trolled here, because I have... But yeah, anyway, he had one card that I couldn't get over with Yamatano, and he played it, so... Yeah, this duel was really troll, because then he plays this, and then he has an equip, and I can't get over it. But I guess it would have worked with Hourglass, so I guess I messed up there. Because I was thinking Hourglass wasn't going to boost I was thinking it wasn't going to boost Yamatano, so that was weird. I had just enough life points. I always struggle with, like, deciding whether Hourglass the effect is worth it, because it's, like, slightly slower than just attacking. Preferred not to use it. I still might have been, like, tilting over that Yugi duel at this point. If you start tilting, it's a lot harder to play optimally. Anyway. So here's Mai, and like, this is the main reason that I put in Battle Ox, because she has 2 Harpy Ladies, and it's 24% for her to play a Harpy Lady turn 1. She also has this card. She has 3 of these, so traps are limited in value. And yeah, Harpy Lady has the wind alignment, so forest beats that, so if you can set any forest monster turn 1, like my favorite Dancing Elf, then you just get over that big Harpy Lady, which is her only threatening card. So the nice thing about Battle Ox is that not only can you get over Harpy Lady, but you can do some pretty serious damage and speed up duels. So here is, I think I've done this before in the run, but good time to explain it now. I have a 300 attack Dancing Elf, and I could have attacked with that, but it's just not worth the time, the 4 or 5 seconds that it takes to directly attack for that little damage. It's very unlikely that that will make a difference in the number of turns. So I just leave it in defense position, and she destroys it, and then since her monster is left in attack position, then I can do a bit more damage. Maya is also annoying because you're still running a lot of fiends. You know, these zombie monsters, clown zombie, armored zombie, dragon zombie, are so efficient with their cost that you have to have them in while your deck capacity is this low. But then she runs 9 light monsters. That's one of them, the Unhappy Maiden. And because that monster has 0 attack and 100 defense, she'll always play it in defense positions, so you have to be careful with attacking it, but not with protecting it against it. Any monster that has more than twice the defense as its attack, the AI will always defend with. So sometimes you can use that to your advantage. You just know what card they've played because they should have attacked with it, but they didn't. So yeah, Maya's deck is 2 Harpy Ladies, and then our next strongest card is Witch's Apprentice, which is 550 attack. She has equips as well, like female equips. So of all the tier 1 duelists, Maya's most likely to beat you. But you have to get pretty unlucky. Cool strat that I don't think it's used in this run is she'll only play Mountain if she has Harpy Lady, because that's her only monster that gets boosted by Mountain. And that's true of all of the duelists in this game. They will not play their field spells unless they have a monster on the field that gets boosted by it. So if Mai goes first and then plays Mountain, then the monster that she'll set, it'll be Harpy Lady, and so you can know to only attack into it with monsters that can get over it. So that's the last beat stick that I'm gonna put in for a while. That's Mechanical Chaser. Thank God I put in Neo the Magic Swordsman. And I guess Man-Eating Treasure Chest is also a beat stick. In the middle of tier 2. But I've got a few useful monster removal cards that I haven't put in yet, because tier 1 is so easy that you don't really need to remove monsters, you just need to get as many beat sticks out there as possible. So I'll be putting those in at the start of tier 2, and then the second guy that I face in tier 2 is just awful, and I've got to make some specific edits to my deck that counter his deck. So really, your deck, what I have now in my deck is like the essence of this run. So Jirai Gumo, Dark Elf, Gemini Elf, Mechanical Chaser, 7 Colored Fish, Giant Red Sea Snake, Lajin, Battle Ox, and Beautiful Headhuntress. So however many beat sticks that is, those are the cards you're going to rely on heavily, duel after duel, to win quickly. And what I found is that when you're struggling with you know, execution, if you're just frustrated that you made a mistake or you got bad luck, it often can just be simplified to spamming beat sticks. Now, I mean, that's not optimal. It's optimal to try to save inputs and try to fuse in certain scenarios, but sometimes the game will just be really nice, like in this duel, and just give you the beat sticks and you just are mashing to win. Even against the harder duelists, it's often like the good duels that you're gonna get on your PB runs are just spamming beat sticks and getting lucky with them not using their strong magic cards. So it's a lot better to just play beat sticks and hope for the best than to just sit there in your hand and try to think of the best play. Sometimes it's really easy to think of the best play, but at other times, it just, like, when in doubt, just play beat sticks, don't worry too much about how much time you're losing. You know, if you're getting fast duels, that's a good thing. And if you want to get better at this game, I mean, you just gotta do more runs, practice, recognize when you make mistakes, and then revisit them, and when you make mistakes, then you will learn better than trying to construct everything in your mind, theoretically. So yeah, I said, what, sub 57 is good, and duels here are a little less than 2 minutes. This duel has a really good opening hand, so sub 57 tier 1 is very solid. I got a sub 56 in my previous PB. The variance in tier 1, I would say, is like ranges from like 55 to like an hour. It's pretty hard to go over an hour with my route that's stealing passwords. Like, I've been playing poorly in my tier 1s and still getting like 57s or 58s. So, it's weird because when I ran this game like 2 years ago, I was getting like 105 tier 1s. I don't know exactly what I was doing wrong then, probably just being slower and navigating the hand and making decisions. But yeah, just play your beat sticks. Knowing the fusions helps for Tristan and Joey in particular, because you can't rely on drawing your beat sticks all the time against those guys. Alright, so here's tier 2, and there's a bit more variance here in terms of the types of duelists. So Esperoba has a lot of thunder monsters, so I'm gonna put in Beast King, which is 1000 attack, 1100 defense. Earth Monster with the alignment advantage. And that also has the effect of destroying every monster on the field, but I'm not really going to need that effect against this duelist. She's very easy. So there's a situation where I know what that card is, because she played it in defense even though she had a monster to attack. So the only monster with more than double the defense in her deck is Psychic Kappa. And just a quick note on the AI with set monsters. If you have a set monster, so hidden, then they will attack it with their strongest monster, which seems like, you know, let's say that you have like, let's say the opponent has like a Cosmo Queen, 2900 attack, and then you have like a Clown Zombie in attack mode, and then you've set something really weak. You would think the smart play would be to go for the Clown Zombie and get that 1550 damage, but the AI will always attack your sets with their strongest monster. So if you have a monster out already against a really strong monster on the other side, then you can kind of protect that monster you already have out by just continuing to set cards. Of course, you're going to have to draw something eventually that gets over that, but you can take advantage of weak AI. A lot of cases in this run. Yeah, Esperoba has Red Medicine, Hinatama, and Equips, but her monsters aren't very good. Drillbug is a really nice card here because it gets over all of her sets, and since she has a lot of thunders, it'll get over, you know, those if she equips them. So a common play here is to just set an Earth monster turn 1, and then she'll run into it, and then you'll have a clear field. Unfortunately, a few of your beat sticks here, Jiraigumo and the 2 fishes, are at an alignment disadvantage, because she runs 3 blast jugglers, which are pyro, and then all of those thunders to get rid of the fishes. Oh yeah, Esperova's a girl to me, and it's not for any reason other than just that she is, so... I could correct myself, but I would just go back to saying she later. In fact, when I was writing my notes on this game, for speedrun.com yesterday, I just constantly kept writing she, even after I corrected it to he. It's just, I don't know why it is. Just looks like a girl. So Esperova is the easiest duelist in Tier 2. Not the fastest, because you'll generally get like sub-10 splits against Kaiba and Weevil and Rex. But you need to have, you don't need to, but it really helps to have a few stronger cards, which you'll get as a result of building up your deck capacity against this guy. The main one, which I'll talk about more when I get to it, is Cocoon of Evolution, which is an effect monster whose effect is not activated manually. It actually activates automatically. I did have in my old BB, the 314, a 5-minute Esperova duel where I just didn't draw any of my beat sticks. I have like 12 of them, and I just kept drawing less than 1,000 attack. That was my equivalent of the Yugi duel that I had earlier. Yeah, for anyone who runs this game or runs any Yu-Gi-Oh game, I would highly recommend either just knowing how to do it yourself or going to, so the website is StatTrek, and it's the Hyper Geometric Calculator. So you can use that to calculate the odds that you will draw any card in your deck on the first turn. So it's just number of cards in the sample is 40, and then sample size is 5, and then number of outcomes that you're looking for is 1, and then the number of outcomes that are possible in your deck is how, you know, so if odds of drawing a single card, 1 in 8. Odds of drawing one of 3 cards, you know, if you have 3 copies, 3 beat sticks, is basically 1 in 3, and then if you have 5, then it's like a coin flip. It's very useful. To some extent, it's never tell me the odds, but it is actually useful to know how likely you are to draw certain cards in your deck. Because then if you run the numbers, you'll realize with how many duels you're getting that you're going to have some that don't draw beat sticks. And then you can make the decision like, alright, I need to actually learn fusions, or I need to maybe put more beat sticks. Like, that's happened to me so many times where it's like, alright, I had a really bad run because I just had 2 or 3 duels that didn't draw beat sticks. It wasn't because the opponent drew well, I just didn't draw my beat sticks, so I gotta try to edit my route so that I have more beat sticks in. And then I end up realizing that, like, you can't fit in that many, and it's not really worth passwording more, so we just have to not get unlucky, but yeah. Lots of math. Like, there's more math probability in Yu-Gi-Oh! Than in Pokemon. Playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Is good conditioning for Pokemon RNG because there's so much more to it. Okay, so the PB that I'm running against here had a good 139 Esperoba 5, but it was the PB before that that had a 5-minute duel. Yeah, I put in widespread for Esperoba, as opposed to earlier, because it has, unlike the other traps, a bit more significant cost of 20. And Esperoba is more likely to attack you. Like in this situation, I couldn't summon something that gets over her non-thunder monsters, so then I'm just setting in a trap and hoping she'll attack it, but once again she plays the only monster in her deck that she'll set in Psychic Kappa, so that play didn't really work out. But if I had attacked with that Ancient Char, well, it would have worked out because she played a Thunder the previous turn, but I didn't know that. Then she plays another Kappa. Lots of little things that you have to consider when you're doing these duels, even though the overall strategy of playing beat sticks is going to work on nearly every duel. You gotta think about how many life points your opponent has left and what's the fastest way to get it to 0. Fewest number of attacks, fewest number of opponent attacks, whether a trap will save time. Alright, so we can talk about this card a bit. I think I've got a couple of tough duels coming up that I want to go over, but Anti-Raigeki is, as the name suggests, a counter to Raigeki, so if your opponent plays Raigeki on the turn that you set Anti-Raigeki, then the opponent's monsters will all get destroyed instead of yours. So being lucky and good with your predictions is very important, because if you set it on a turn that Raigeki doesn't get used, it's just a waste, and it has a cost of 20, so you are sacrificing like 2/3 of a beat stick to put in Anti-Raigeki. There is one turn later in this duel where it really, really helps out, and it only takes like one turn. Did I draw Anti-Raigeki here? What was that trap? Yeah, this guy has 3 Raigekis. And then 3 duelists later in the run have 3. So yeah, this duel is kind of weird. Okay, so I didn't draw it, I drew something else. So this is where I messed up, because I was like, I don't have any monsters, and then I get Magician of Faith and Key Mace mixed up. So I was like, alright, let's make Dark Witch here, but it was the wrong thing. So I was like, whoops. Alright, well, rip. And this is where it's like, I really just want to draw my beat sticks, but my beat stick got Raigeki'd, and yeah, I didn't have Anti-Raigeki. Like, this might have been the worst duel in the run, but it's expected to get like one bad duel against this guy. Combination of mistakes and bad draws. Which is interesting because this guy has much stronger cards than what he's been playing against me. But just the Raigeki alone was enough to disrupt it. But yeah, the problem with this guy is he has a ton of monsters that he'll always play in defense position because they have more than twice the defense as attack. So you don't have a very good idea of what his monsters are. Like if you go first and you set something, then he's not going to attack into you. You're just going to have to guess. And so like in this situation here, I'm scared of him playing one of his high defense monsters. So I'm just attacking with Witch first to like see what it is. And I would have won this turn if that had been something weaker, that I wasn't likely to be weaker. It's like, this is maybe the hardest guy to face in terms of strategy, because it's so punishing when you mess up. So the cards that you're really worried about here are Stone Statue of the Aztecs, which is that card, 2000 defense, and I can't get over it, so I just have to end my turn. 850 life points left, and then he can tribute that for Gear Golem the Moving Fortress, which is 2200 defense, also an earth monster. So what you're looking for to get over those are wind monsters, so you have, what, 4 of them? 3 dragons and then Drollbird. And, like, here I just don't know what to do. Like, probably just ending my turn each time would have been optimal. I just need to draw a Wind, or Fiend's Hand, or Beast King, or I need him to attack my, my Gemini Elf. So if he just plays a monster and then attacks my Gemini Elf, then I'll be able to win with just damage next turn. But he just doesn't draw. He probably has, like, Exodia pieces in his hand, because this guy does have Exodia, and I have lost to that. Just a nightmare. Some misplays, but also just bad luck for him to draw the one card that I couldn't get over. And then he sacrificed it for Gear Golem. He also has Hannibal, Necro, whatever, which is, he'll actually attack with that. So then, you know, it has 1400 attack, and you can get over it easily. This is just a shit show. Like, I know that I can play this guy better, and often the duels will go quickly if he doesn't draw well. But, like, here I get over his 2000 defense Stone Statue, but if that had been like a Dragon Piper, or a Psychic Kappa, or a Forest Monster, then I would have been in a really bad position, because he does run several Forest Monsters to back up his Earths. And then here, I'm just like, well... Gear Golem is level 5, 1 sack. So there's Hannibal, which is what you want to see, but in this case, it gets over my hourglass, and now I can't get over him, so it's a wonderful start to my Seeker duels. This is why you don't... This is why you put in Beast King, even though it's expensive and it isn't a beat stick, because he can save you. Yeah, I don't know if it's 5 or 6, but it's 1 tribute. Thankfully. So Magician of Faith has helped me out here a couple times with the alignment advantage. Anyway, I think it all goes pretty smoothly from here, or at least, after this turn it does. But it's just so awful. Like, that card could have been an Air Marmot, or, yeah, Mechmol, or what's his, just Air Marmot. So I was like, I don't want to attack it with Jirai, when I could maybe get over it with Magician of Faith. There we go. And now I do massive damage. But then it wasn't likely to be an Air Marmot, so I just lose time attacking for no reason. It really, really hurts you against this guy that you can't rely on your beat sticks to get over his high defense monsters. Like, Jirai Gumo gets over everything except for Gear Golem, which he has to, you know, tribute to play, except Dragon Piper. And not only, you know, Dragon Piper has the alignment advantage, so not only do you not get over it if you attack with Jirai, but then Jirai gets destroyed, which is awful. And then, like, Gemini Elf and the Fishes and Mechanical Chaser will get over Dragon Piper, but not Stone Statue. Dark Elf ties with Stone Statue, so it's just really frustrating. So yeah, the first 2 duels here do not go well at all. but I think the last three are a little bit better. So I can talk about Anti-Raigeki, which is a card I put in for him and then put in later as well. I didn't draw it at the right times in the first two duels here, but the strategy for that is you basically just want to know what triggers Raigeki. And so what I've figured out so far is they'll play Raigeki if you have a monster on the field, and they have a monster on the field, and they can't destroy your monster. So that doesn't necessarily mean that your monster is stronger than theirs. In this case, it is. So he plays a monster, he reads, oh, I can't get over it with Big Beak, so I'm just gonna Raigeki. But if he has, like, already finished attacking you, or he's, like, fused, like if he fuses with something on the field, then he can't attack with that monster, so then you've got a monster on the field, and he's like, I can't destroy it, so now I'm going to Raigeki. But he doesn't seem to want to Raigeki if he doesn't have a monster on the field. Like, he'll have it in the hand, and then, like, let's say he can't summon anything. Let's say he just has Exodia pieces, which he won't play. Then he'll just not Raigeki, and you can sometimes just win if he doesn't summon a monster. I'm not entirely sure that's always how it works, because I have seen them Raigeki when they have nothing on the field, but I think that's because they, like, have nothing in their hand that they can play, so they have to, like, either use Raigeki or discard. So if you're in a situation where they're very likely to play a monster, and you're likely to not have all of your monsters destroyed, then setting Anti-Raigeki is really good. Because since this guy runs 3 copies and the later duelists run 3 copies, the odds that they start with it, with at least one Raigeki, are 34%. And, like, it can save like a minute if you time your Anti-Raigeki properly. Having said that, it's possible it's not worth it because of what you have to sacrifice in deck capacity. There's another card, like, Anti-Raigeki is, like, you have to know how to use it. Skilled players only, right? And I'm not even sure I'd consider myself to be a skilled player at this game, because it's a tough game to optimize. But yeah, another card that, like, you should only use if you're good and you know how to use it is Catapult Turtle. And I don't use that because I'm still skeptical about it being worth the time it takes to password it, and you know, not having as many beat sticks in the deck, because Catapult Turtle also has a cost of 20. But it can be very useful for speeding up duels. So Catapult Turtle's effect is it's a 1 tribute monster, so yeah, if you can get it on the field, then its effect is it destroys all of your monsters except itself, except Catapult Turtle, and inflicts damage to your opponent equal to the sum of your monster's attack. So if you've built up a field of, like, 3 beat sticks worth, like, you know, 5,400 attack, then you can sacrifice one of them for Catapult Turtle, use its effect, and then you'll do, like, 3,600 damage, and that's a lot faster than attacking 3 times. Like 7 seconds faster, depending on your menuing. Faster even more in the Japanese version. It just depends on how often you get to use that effect. You have to be able to use it like 3 times to justify putting it in. And then it's not worth having in the deck for later in the run, because you really need to have, like, cards that can attack, that can put you in winning positions. Catapult Turtle's a card you'd only use in a once the duel is already won, and just speed up the animations. Alright, so that is the first reset of the run. So when you have a really terrible opening hand like that, which doesn't happen very often, you can just reset. The game auto-saves, so I didn't lose any progress. And now I've got a much better hand. So I think this was a misplay. I don't know what exactly I was doing here. You don't need to set widespread for Gemini Elf, and then I just get it Raigeki'd, and now this was like a pretty stupid play. I will do this sometimes where it's like, I want to do two things, but they're done, they're best done separately. Like, Gemini Elf is a good turn 1 set here. Well, it's a risky turn 1 set, but still a good one. And then setting a trap, I mean, is always kind of a good play. Even against this guy, it's like... traps are just so good. But since Gemini Elf protects against everything that he can attack with, there was no need to set a trap behind it. Like, I should have set Hourglass, I think. And, then I would have been able to use its effect next turn instead of having to wait. But then it just would have gotten Raigeki'd anyway, so, like, it's... For every moment where you feel like, oh, I made a really bad mistake, it's like, it probably wouldn't have mattered that much anyway because of all the pure RNG. Like, if you get Raigeki, if he draws Raigeki or has it in his opening hand and you don't have anti-Raigeki, it's probably going to be a bad duel no matter what you do. So double Hourglass hype since I won a second one for Mako. Can't password the same card multiple times, unfortunately. Alright, so you're supposed to reset here, because it's faster to reset than talking to this guy. It saves as soon as the life points hit 0, basically, so you don't need to go through all of this text. But I was tilted because of how poorly the first 2 duels went, and my mistakes. So I forgot to, and that's rather silly. But it only saves, like, what, 8 seconds on, console or on a Game Boy player that has a proper hard reset, so whatever. I also didn't reset after the 5th wins against Haishin and Darknite, which are, but those are much more minor, so... Alright, so now we can talk about this card, Cocoon of Evolution. It's not a beat stick, but it can be even better. Now, we could not put Cocoon into the deck as at the start of Tier 2, even though it would have been useful, because our Duelist level wasn't high enough. Cocoon is 60 cost, and it's worth it, because, first of all, 2000 defense is a pretty safe set. Whether it's turn 1 or later in a duel, just protecting against your opponent's strongest monsters. And then its effect is, if it stays alive for a turn, then on the next turn, it turns into Great Moth, which is 2600 attack, 2500 defense. And then on the next turn, it turns into Perfectly Ultimate Great Moth, which is 3500, 3000. So an absolute monster, and the forest alignment is pretty safe. Very few. Your opponent runs very few Pyros. So just leading Cocoon against like Rex or Weevil or Kaiba is so fast and safe. It is worth the 60 cost. Although there are some situations where it's just faster to win with beat sticks. So after the really bad Seeker, 3 minutes behind, this section goes really well. I found that most of my runs I do well in this section, which is a combination of it just being easier, not going up against Seeker's walls or Mai's. I mean, Mai is pretty easy too, but generally the only things that will threaten you on Rex and Weevil are double equips. And here, he plays Wasteland in a single equip, but he's already down to Tamasaurus, which is pretty weak. But if Rex or Weevil leads double equip and or their field spell, then they can get over everything in your deck if you don't win by attribute. But the nice thing about that is then you can just reset immediately. Once you're in a winning position against these guys, it tends to go very fast. And some of your monsters get boosted by their field. Like the 3 zombie monsters, like their Dragon Zombie gets a boost. And the field boosts in this game, I don't know if you've noticed yet, they are 30% of your attack and defense, as opposed to, in the TCG they're a pathetic 200 each. And then in FM they're 500, which is pretty good. But then in FM, field spells are just like if you use one, then you can't summon monsters. So yeah, it's almost worth putting Yami in your own deck because you've got so many cards that get boosted by it, like Neo and Dark Elf, Gemini Elf, Legend. You could put in Beastro Butcher as well, but it's a lot of text each time you use it. So these duels will generally go, if you go second, then just play a beat stick to get over whatever they set. If you go first, then try to play a trap and set something, or try to set something that has an alignment advantage. So against Rex, that's setting a wind monster, against Weevil, that's setting a pyro. Or if you can't do that, you can just summon a monster turn 1, and then they'll set, most likely. You'll have to do an extra attack, but still pretty fast. The benchmark for getting through this tier of 6 duelists is like sub 2 hours or like sub 158, 159. Of course, once you reach the end of this tier, then all of the massive variance of tier 3 begins, like immediately. You face a guy that you can beat in 10 minutes or 20, so you don't worry too much about what your pace is after tier 2. You're not going to be resetting at that point. It would be like resetting before Mount Moon in the old red runs in Pokemon. You want to give yourself a chance at getting the good side of the variance. It's like all of my PBs in this game have been like not great starts, combination of mistakes and some bad luck, and then in tier 3 I just get really lucky. And you'll see once we get there, it's very dangerous. The 2 runs that I had before this one got just demolished in tier 3, and I was like, oh, I should have streamed these because I would have had like 5 highlights. Like it's the word unbelievable that just gets overused. I find myself saying a lot. And it's such a contrast to tier 2 because of how like 85% of your tier 2 duels are gonna go like this, where you just spam beat sticks. In tier 3, you actually want to open your weaker cards, anticipating that they will get destroyed or change of hearted. Well, I streamed these offline because, as I mentioned before, the run requires a lot of focus, with the exception of like this section. You have to really pay attention to what cards are in your hand and what your opponent has played and what drops you've gotten. And the password inputs are also very clunky and not particularly pleasant to listen to. And it's not as popular as Pokemon and other issues with the stream, but I've done most of my runs for this game offline. It just happens to be a tougher game to stream. Alright, last set of passwords here before Weevil. So Weevil runs a ton of forest monsters, and you can run some pretty big ones, so we want to put in Pyros. I believe it is optimal to put in like all of your Pyro drops. Like usually you get 1 or 2 Pyro drops by this point, but it's such a nightmare to edit your deck for just one duelist. Like you have to edit and then unedit after the fact, and especially when you're adding drops, which are not going to be the same every run, then you're going to be navigating to different card numbers in your trunk, and you won't be able to practice it, so I just go with 3 Pyros for Weevil. So, Dark Fire Dragon, Flame Piper, and Dragon Piper. These 3 Pyros are good in different ways. Dark Fire Dragon is a beat stick. It's a dangerous beat stick because 1500 attack doesn't get over that much, but it still does some pretty good damage with direct attacks. Flame Piper is just a low-cost pyro, so it allows you to fit more regular beat sticks like this guy. And then Dragon Piper is a nice card for tier 3 and Dark Knight because 1800 defense is pretty safe, but if it gets Change of Hearted or Raigeki, then you're not really losing much of a threat with its 200 attack. Also, Dragon Piper can fuse with your Dreams monsters, your 0-cost Dreams monsters, to make Ushioni 2150 attack. Deck editing is quite a chore in this game because you can do so many different things. You can go by 100, you can go by 5, you can go by 1, you can go up or down. It might have been better to play Cocoon there. I was just a little bit worried about him potentially sacrificing and equipping, and then I would just lose. Cocoon can often be a risky strat, because you have to play defensively for a turn before you go offensive. It really, really hurts when you play Cocoon on tier 3 or Dark Knight and it gets destroyed. Because, like, it just needs to not get destroyed and you're in such a good position. Yeah, 3,500. And if he plays Forest, if Weevil plays Forest, then it goes up to 4,550. Because of the 30%. So this is the duel that I end up resetting. From the double equip. So Pinchopper is 2300 attack, 2560 defense, and that invisible wire only goes up to 2000 defense. Only destroys monsters with 2000. So I use Trapmaster here. Trapmaster is really good for later. Unfortunately, the opponent attacks with its weaker monster first in a situation like this. If Trapmaster had been set, then it would attack with a stronger monster, but then I couldn't have activated its effect if it was set. So I just had to hope that he didn't play another monster, or like he played Skullmark Ladybug, which can't get over Trapmaster, so that I got the Pinchhopper instead. So from that position, having wasted my monster removal card and having nothing else in the hand, it was unlikely for me to win, and if I did win, it was going to be slow, so I just reset. So here it works out nicely. For him sacrificing into the trap. And then, just as I did earlier in the run, just leaving your weak monsters in defense to bait out a monster in attack position and not waste time doing 400 damage is going to be faster. Another one of those awkward situations where I'm like, alright, if I use Hourglass, then I save an attack, but is the animation, the time save, worth the effect? And it's hard to time it specifically, but I was just thinking, well, if he somehow double equips, then I'll have a stronger monster to deal with it. I'm really bad at using Hourglass. Like, I've noticed a lot of the duels where I make mistakes are with Hourglass in him. Kind of a shame. Alright, so that's a good drop, but I'm not gonna put it in because, you know, that's Beast King, card that removes all monsters on the field with its effect, but it's kind of a high cost. I already have one, and I've considered taking it out at times. I don't really want to put in another one when I like the number of beat sticks in my deck. So, yeah, you can say that was questionable, but I've had runs where I took out beat sticks for monster removal cards, like Crush Card and Beast King and Fiend's Hand, and then just had the worst tier 3s to not drawing beat sticks, so I don't think it matters that much. So in this duel, I didn't set a trap turn 1 because I drew Darkfire, which is very likely to just get over whatever he plays elementally. But then I set the trap turn 2 because he was more likely to play his Aqua Snake on that turn. Aqua Snake's one of his weaker monsters. Every duelist in the game that relies heavily on one set of attributes, such as forest monsters for Weevil, will have at least a few monsters to counter whatever your counter is. So I counter his forest monsters with Pyro, but he has 3 Aqua Snakes, which counter the Pyros. Mako has a bunch of Aquas, so you counter with Thunder, and then he counters with a few Earth monsters. And this isn't that bad, because generally these monsters are going to be pretty weak. And just any duelist that relies heavily on attributes is going to have a weak point that you can exploit. Whereas the well-rounded duelists are the hardest ones to beat, and just the hardest ones to strategize for. Another strategy that I employ more than other runners is for the 2 duelists in tier 3 that rely heavily on attributes, I put in a ton of counters. So for Simon, aka Paradox, I put in a ton of shadow monsters, and that way I'm a little bit safer against his crush cards and spellbinding circles and trivia monsters, brain control. Like it's really nice to have outs to that. And then Hai Shin has a ton of fiend monsters, so I put in as many light monsters as I can. And that's one of the reasons that I put in cards like Key Mace and Magician of Faith. Key Mace, I think, should be routed out because I'm just not using the fusions that it makes enough. Like, it can fuse with females. It is a female, and it can fuse with females, but it just, I don't end up using it enough. And then it's not a spellcaster like Magician of Faith, so it can't fuse with dragons or zombies. By the way, fusions are almost always a bad idea when you get to this stage of the run. I have done a few when I've drawn poorly, but just having a card advantage, I mean, if you play the TCG, you're familiar with card advantage. Cards that are a -1 are generally not played. Cards that are a +1 are pretty broken. Anytime you fuse, it's a -1, and since your cards can get destroyed by magics and your opponent's powerful monsters, and by attribute, you're often costing yourself a valuable card when you fuse in late game. In the early game, you know you're going to win no matter what, so it's just about the fastest path to that victory. Yeah, fusing in the TCG without, like, Cyberstein is a nice meme. Alright, so is this the duel where I make a silly mistake? It's either this one or the next one. So Kaiba is pretty straightforward. Okay, it's the next one. He has a variety of attributes, but doesn't have good magic cards. So as long as you can draw your beat sticks, you're gonna be fine. The only thing he can do is drag and treasure his grappler. And then he'll usually just tribute his grappler for something weaker anyway, if he manages to get 2 dragon treasures off. But you have to be careful when attacking Kaiba's sets, because he has Sagi the Dark Clown. Here I try to be cute for some reason, and it works out. Just save animation time by baiting an attack. I'm pretty sure that play is, like, not worth it, but it's feeling cheeky, I guess. Yeah, the annoying thing about Sagi is not only is it 1500 defense, but it's a shadow alignment, so your light monsters will just get destroyed. So that's Dunamis and Gemini Elf. So when you draw Jirai, it's pretty much an instant win here, or Dark Elf. It must be the third duel that I messed up. Because this one is, yeah. So sometimes when you've already got a path to victory routed out, how many attacks you're gonna need, it's just worth it to save inputs. I don't need to attack with my weaker Dark Elf before Jirai, because, well, in this case it ends up being the same number of inputs, but, like, let's say that Battle Ox was actually, like a fish, then he'd be at 2,000 life points here, and then I could just attack with Dark Elf to win, and I would save inputs, destroying his monsters with Jirai instead. scrolling through your field in hand is actually quite slow. It's like almost a half second per input. By the way, I'm doing Kaiba before Pandora, which I think no one else has done before. I certainly haven't seen it. I've just found Kaiba to be easier, both in terms of execution and not getting bad luck, because he isn't so dangerous with equips and field spell. But yeah, here, a very bad mistake. It was no need to attack with Darkfire there. It's just an unnecessary risk, and it ends up costing me a bit. It's just very intuitive to try to attack with your weaker monster so you can inflict more damage, but you really have to be careful in this game. The punishment is not just that you have to do an extra attack, you can sometimes destroy your own monster. Although in this case, I guess I would have gotten destroyed the next turn anyway by that grappler. So I end up having to set a weaker monster to bait him into attack position, and now I've got a path to victory. And Darkfire Dragon is, it's a really cool card, and the fact that it has such a valuable attribute while still doing damage is useful, but you have to be careful. When you start getting around that 1500 attack range, then a lot of your opponent's cards are stronger than yours at this stage. Another thing, Kaiba versus Pandora, is that Kaiba does not have Dark Hole. Pandora does have one copy. But it doesn't matter that much, the order of these last two, because you're not putting in that many drops, that many cards anyway. That's a good drop. I am going to put that in later, because it's a light monster with good attack and defense, and at the very end of the game, when light monsters are the most useful, you have a bit of extra deck capacity, or at least my route does. Another small change that I've made to the route around this stage is this was a silly play. I didn't know why I summoned this and then tried to set it. Dreams monsters are a bit fragile because the Fiend attribute is so common, but it's also very valuable for destroying shadows. Anyway, previous routes would add Crush Card to the deck around this time. Crush Card is just Raigeki, except for it doesn't destroy monsters with less than 1500 attack. It's only 50 cost, which is pretty good for monster removal, but I decided to delay Crush Card because Kaiba and Pandora don't have that many monsters with 1500 attack or more, and Crush Card is just dead weight in your hand and in your deck in terms of, you know, you have to remove one or two beat sticks for it. If they don't have any 1500s. But Crush Card is so valuable on tier 3, and especially Dark Knight. It saved me a few times in this run. So I put that in at the start of tier 3. Of course, Kaiba does have blue eyes, so he can drag and treasure those, but very, very rarely does he get to play blue eyes, and if he does, you have a lot of shadow monsters in your deck. So you can just destroy it by attribute. Kaiba has a lot of tribute monsters. Occasionally he will just have nothing to play. Alright, now this part of my PB, I got a 7.5 minute Pandora in my previous PB, so that's how I got a 154 tier 2, I think, and then proceeded to get destroyed by tier 3. So I'm behind here, but really not in that bad a position at all. So Pandora, the way you play him is he's got a similar deck to Weevil in that he relies heavily on one type and then has a few counters to your counter. So his main attribute is Shadow, and you have 3 Dreams monsters in your deck to counter that. I don't think it's worth putting more in since there aren't really any good Dreams monsters besides the 3 that you password in, and you can usually get over this guy with just beat sticks. But he can be dangerous because he has 3 Dark Energies and 3 Yamis. So he can get monsters above 2000 attack pretty easily. It's kind of interesting. This part of the run is probably the most boring to you guys, and to me, just watching it back. But when I'm doing runs, this part is just heaven. It's like, oh, I finally have a break from the tilting RNG of Seeker and Tier 1, and maybe just the way that I am, where I like parts of the run where you don't have to... It's not so much that you don't have to think, as much as you don't have to worry about things going wrong. If things go wrong here, you got quite unlucky. So you see this massive Gemini elf in Yami. Unfortunately, it doesn't live for very long because light is weak to shadow. Shadow is just such a good type. I've thought about just running a deck themed, based around Shadow type or based around like Dark Elf because you can fuse for it easily. Watto has done a bit of routing for that. That was my casual deck back in the day. It was just like Dark Elf and Yami and Wajin and some other like Fiend types. But just a brute force beat stick approach is better. There's another reason I love light monsters. Man, Magician of Faith has really gone in this run. Even though light is at a disadvantage here, there are quite a few situations where he doesn't have any shadow monsters, or his shadow monsters in his hand are weaker than his fiends, so then he'll just play the fiend, and you can get over that with something as weak as Magician Faith, and it's very efficient to have such a low-cost monster still doing work at this stage of the game. Like here, you know, this Hourglass, it doesn't really matter whether it gets destroyed by attribute or normally, like, it's not strong enough to get over anything with its defense. So I just get a free opportunity at destroying one of his monsters by attribute. Also, he has Dark Hole, and he'll use Dark Hole if he has nothing. Like, if he runs into your monster and gets destroyed by attribute, or runs into your trap, say 1500 attack. Didn't want to have to summon that, because it could get destroyed, but... Very happy to have Dreams Monster for cases like this. Anyway, he can play Dark Hole when he runs into your attribute or trap, because at that point he can't play anything, and Dark Hole has no disadvantage to him. And there you go. Very annoying when this happens, when he just top decks the attribute that is disadvantageous and just can't really do anything about it. He has 6 Fiends and then like 12 Shadows. Plus his tribute monsters are mostly Shadow. See there, I knew I had Dunamis in the hand, and I would have had exactly game if I could get over that set with Clown Zombie, so I took the risk. This game certainly has a knack for, punishing correct plays and rewarding bad plays. That's another good drop that I end up just not putting in. That Pyro can help on Dark Knight, but I had other deck edits to focus on at that point. Mechanical Chaser is pretty neat for that extra 50 attack that you get. Its alignment of Fiend is actually pretty terrible, but when this guy plays Yami, then his monsters can go up to 1820 defense. Same thing with Mai's Harpy Lady. When she puts that in defense after Mountain, it's 1820. Dark Knight has some 1800 attack tribute monsters, and any 1800 attack monsters. It's nice to have Mechanical Chaser. Highlights from Rex to Kaiba? Well, that's the dull part of the run. I mean, I made a couple of mistakes that cost me, you know, maybe like 25 seconds each. But pretty much all of these duels have been just beat stick ownage, plus one duel that I reset because I got double equip. Tier 3 and Dark Knight are a lot more fun. I don't remember all of my duels. I know Dark Knight had a pretty clutch finish. Tier 2 is dull to watch, but it's a much needed break in this run. Every single run that I do, when I have Seeker second, it's like I get tilted on Seeker, and then I'm like, I'm gonna reset, but then I slowly calm myself down during this section because I always get easy duels. Okay, so that reset is what I should have done on Seeker after the 5th win. Both of those ghouls get like possessed by Merrick after the 5th win, so they talk forever, and it's just faster to reset as soon as the game saves the data. And now we're on to Tier 3. So this guy is Variance City. He has 3 Changes of Heart, 3 Dark Hole, 3 Raigeki, 3 Megamorph, and then pretty much the same monsters that Kaiba has. If he opens multiple Change of Heart, you're pretty much dead. If he opens like Raigeki and Change of Heart, then it's gonna be tough to just win. So you want to lead your weak monsters, let him Change of Heart, Raigeki those, and then hopefully he'll run out, and you can start to beat him with your beat sticks. So yeah, Dark Hole, don't care, that monster wasn't that useful anyway. Yeah, this theme is amazing. I actually prefer this to the Forbidden Memories version. So he put in Crush card, and it might have been worth using that. There's one duel where I should have played Crush card a turn early. But yeah, there's an interesting relationship here between like how you have to play safe in leading your weak monsters, and then having to play aggressive so that you beat him before he draws his strong cards. Like, with my hand size, what it is right now, I think this is where I probably should have played Crush card, because it would have sped up the duel, even though it was risky. Yeah, like, you don't want to be taking too long to finish him off when you have a beat stick out there, because that extra turn that you give him, he could draw Change of Heart and just beat you. This was also a misplay, because that wasn't necessarily a 1500 plus attack monster. Should have just attacked. But yeah, you have to balance these two mentalities, like, save my strongest cards, but also go on the offensive when it's necessary. It can be very, very, very punishing to make a mistake, or just to get unlucky here, and, you know, you get baited into these long duels where you're struggling to hang on, because it's like, I only have to do 2,000 more damage to win, but then you just can't win because he keeps drawing these OP magic cards. I mean, these cards that he has, Change of Heart, Raigeki, they're 255 cost. You can't even fit 3 of them in your deck, and he can fit, 12 of them plus all of his monsters. It's a good thing that his AI is somewhat predictable. Yeah, this guy, thankfully, I don't see too much of his bad stuff, and then I do have one. Really nice duel where I counter his Raigeki, but I do run into some trouble later duelists. Yeah, I like Darkfire. I mean, I talked earlier about the downsides. 1500 attack doesn't get over that much, but I like you need to have Pyros in. You need to have like at least 2, probably 3. So I figure might as well get some power out of it. I've also considered Fire Kraken, but that cost is just so high. So a good split against this guy is like 13 minutes. But I've had it take as long as 20 minutes. Because you can just lose to him like 3 times, and a loss can take, you know, anywhere from like 1 to 4 minutes. Alright, so I think this is a situation where I can talk about how we use anti-Raigeki. So there's a decent chance, that he doesn't get over this Battle Ox next turn, and then he would use Raigeki. But I don't really need to protect this Battle Ox. I mean, it's just one monster. I've got another backup, and you know, I'd rather protect myself when I'm in a better position than this. And of course, he can just change of heart as well. So now I'm in a position where you know, again, because he can tribute, or like play Megamorph, there's a chance that Raigeki just wasn't going to be in a position to be used. But now that I have something stronger and I've cleared his field, if he has Raigeki, decent chance, or you know, there's just that he will use it if he has it at this point. So set the anti-Raigeki, and then not only do I get hit to protect my own monster, but I destroy his, and I can speed up the duel. So it's one of those cards where it feels silly for putting it in, but then when it pays off, it's like, I'm so glad I put that in. We just get a much, much faster duel as a result. I actually might have lost. I don't know what card he played that I anti-Raigeki'd, but it's possible it was a card that I couldn't get over since I just had Darkfire. I guess Trapmaster probably would have saved me, but yeah, it's nice because several duelists have 3 Raigekis, and there's another card that has that dynamic where it really pays off, but it's a waste if you don't ever get to use it, and that's Stop Defense for Seeker. Problem with Stop Defense is it's a little bit more expensive, and it's only useful for Seeker. The anti-Raigeki is useful for 4 duelists. So this, I took forever to decide here. I'm really glad I did what I did. I didn't want to set Witch's Apprentice because I wanted to save that in case he played a light monster, which he can do if he, you know, if he changed of hearts and contribute for a light monster. But I didn't want to play Armored in attack mode because he could get over that with Battle Ox and Ryukushin, and then I didn't have anything good to defend with, so I took some time and I made a good play. Tier 3, you want to be a little bit more careful in that way, to make the correct decision rather than the fast one. I think my Dark Knight was very similar in that, like, I definitely lost some time to making sure I didn't make a mistake and, like, making sure I made the correct decision, but it would have been worse if I had tried to go too fast. So this is the good side of Piso. You're not going to see the bad side, where he opens 2 changes of heart and kills you, or where he just Raigekis you turn after turn. I don't think this guy is the worst. I think he's like the 3rd worst behind Ishizu and Dark Knight. There is one card he does not have, and if he had that card, then, like, I don't even know. But the other 2 duelists, Ishizu and Dark Knight, have that card, and that's why they're the worst. So we get a nice... Light monsters have been so good this run. Like, he doesn't have that many fiends, so pretty lucky there. And that play, I love it so much against these guys when you can set something and then destroy their attacking monster via attribute, it puts you in like so much better position than if you were to just set something and have it get destroyed. See, now imagine if I had anti-Regeki in this hand, how good that would be. I started to get a bit nervous here, because I was so close to having like a godly Pisetto. But thankfully I get this Gemini off draw and back in a winning position. Yeah, I haven't had that happen where where Simon plays Dainketo like on the last turn. I mean, usually he'll play it turn 1. It's more likely that he has it turn 1 than he draws it late in the duel, but it can be pretty deadly in terms of speedrun. Like, slight misplay here. I was supposed to attack with treasure chest last turn so that I could win in one fewer attack here. I was scared of Soggy, but then... Or I was scared of the Fiend monsters, but I also should have been scared of Soggy and attacking with Gemini off. So yeah, that was sub 11 Pisetto is amazing. Now this guy is much easier, although he has plenty of annoying magic cards. The reason this guy is easier is that his deck is so heavily... it's so full of light monsters, and his strongest monsters are light, so even though he's got some annoying Dreams monsters to get over your shadows, the stuff that can kill you is all light monsters, so you can just spam shadow monsters and then have a few backups for his Dreams monsters, and you'll beat this guy. The most annoying part of dueling Simon is he has 3 crush cards, so if you try to beat him down quickly, it'll often just slow you down, but you've got to take that risk. So there I didn't have to set the trap, but the reason I did is he has 3 brain control, and if he tributed, or if he used brain control and then tributed for a Dark Witch or Orion the Battle King, then I wouldn't have had any shadows left in the hand to deal with that. So there is the Dreams. She pulls out Maiden pretty often, but it's just a minor annoyance. So I have something like 9 or 10 shadow monsters in the deck for Simon. And honestly, you could justify putting in more if you get the drops. So a lot of duels will go like this, where you destroy her main threat with a shadow monster, and then she'll counter you, and then you'll just play something moderately strong to get over that counter, and then finish from there. I mean, pretty much every duel goes like that, unless she uses Crush Card, and then it can get kind of annoying. Unfortunately, your smaller traps don't work. Now here's another misplay. I don't know why I didn't just Fiend's Hand right away. I was thinking, alright, she's gonna tribute because she has 6 tributes in her deck, so I'll just wait for her to tribute before I Fiend's Hand, but that was kind of silly because her tribute wouldn't have even been that big of a threat compared to Dunamis, so I should have just used Fiend's Hand that turn. Or I was thinking like brain control, top deck into tribute. There's just so many situations where playing cute, trying to construct a duels a specific way, isn't actually faster. It's just better to try to win as quickly as possible. So like here, I played the weaker Shadow, but it might have just been optimal to play the stronger one. She can't Crush Card over this, but if she has Crush Card, then she's gonna be able to use it later in the duel anyway. Actually came somewhat close to losing this one, but pretty hard to lose to Simon. We'll see more of a Spellbinding Circle and Shadow Spell toward the end. Shadow Spell lowers your level, or your attack stage by 2, but your attack stage can't go any lower than -1, so unless you're at +1, then Shadow Spell is just going to do the same as Spellbinding Circle. So that'll get used in a similar situation to Raigeki, when you have a monster. Actually, they'll use it when pretty much whenever you have a monster that they can't destroy, even if they don't have a monster on the field. So, you know, they play a monster, then they Spellbinding, and then they can get over you. But even if they, like, they might not be able to get over you after the Spellbinding. They're not going to only use it when it will cause them to get over it, so Spellbinding is not really a threat. You're happy to see it because it's not Crush Card. Alright, so this is a situation that I alluded to early in the run. Now, I could just attack that face down with Headhuntress there, and I'd probably get over it because she runs more lights than dreams, but there's a chance it's dreams. Whereas if she tributes, it's guaranteed to be a light. She only has light tributes. So then she'll just ram into me, and the duel goes really quickly. There's a chance that I got punished there. Main risk was if she used Brain Control. I'm not sure what was optimal. I like playing for those situations, those really fast duels. And if she has Brain Control, it's not going to be great either way. Don't think I needed to set the trap there. Trapmaster is kind of annoying here, how a lot of the times when you set a trap, they don't even go into it because they've played a light monster. I actually didn't draw shadows very well against Simon, so it was not the best, Simon split. Also should have played something weaker there because of, the risk. Of Brain Control, because now she can get over me with Dunamis. It's always challenging when you have two monsters that are very similar in attack, like figuring out what's more valuable. Playing the higher attack monster so that you can potentially win in fewer attacks and defend against their stronger monsters, or play the weaker monster in case it gets destroyed by attribute or magic card so that you can save your stronger monster for the more important stages of the duel. And those are the kind of situations where you can get in trouble if you think about it too much, because it matters so little. Most of the time it, just it's the fewest inputs. I think that's where I lost a lot of time with my old PBs, just taking too long to make decisions. Stressing over whether it was the most optimal decision as opposed to the fastest. And this is a bit more like it. This Masked Clown, which is one of the three starting shadow monsters that you get without passwording. It's gonna carry me for the whole duel here. Now I attack with this every turn, even though it has 500, and it's kind of slow. Because in Tier 3 and on Dark Knight, you never know when a duel is going to go south to, crush cards, brain controls. I mean, you can... If you have enough shadow monsters for Simon, you're going to be able to win, and you're not so much concerned about winning as just being put in a defensive position and then the duel being considerably slower. So if you just get that extra damage every turn, and even though it's a bit slower, in terms of number of attacks, it can save potentially multiple turns. But it's probably not that optimal, unless it's like 700 or more attack. It's just easier to execute a duel if it goes for fewer turns. So rather than stressing myself out over, calculating a specific path to victory with barely doing enough damage with each attack, and just spam the A button and it's a little bit easier. Alright, I don't know who's worse, Ishizu or Dark Knight. I think Dark Knight is worse, but the run that I had before this one, Ishizu was a heartbreaker. So, her deck is... She doesn't have Raigeki, so we don't put in anti-Raigeki yet, but she has 3 Dark Holes, 3 Megamorphs, and 3 Swords of Revealing Light, and you can probably imagine why, in the speedrun, we don't want to see swords. But it's even worse than you're thinking. Alright, so Ishizu has Mystical Elf, which is 2000 defense. She's got a variety of attributes, so there I played it a little bit safe with the Trapmaster, rather than attacking her set, which I wasn't necessarily going to get over, and it works out because I get her to waste her Dark Hole. But here we go. So we get a lot of text with swords, because not only is it a lot of text the first one, but every single turn, the game tells you swords is active. And generally the fastest way to play through swords is just to do nothing, but here I'm setting a couple of shadow monsters because she has a lot of lights, and then she could just run into my shadows with her lights, and then I can do a bunch of damage once swords expires, but then she just top decks Dark Hole, so it's just awful. Like, you don't want to do nothing when she plays swords, because then you can very easily find yourself in a losing position with low life points. And there's the Mystical Elf, thank god for shadow monsters. But it's just so... Everything that you can do under swords is not helpful to you. In some way, you're going to be... With every passing turn of swords, you're going to be in a worse position, and she's going to be in a better position, and you're going to be losing time. So... getting good swords luck is the most important part of the run. It's 33-34% for her to have swords in her opening hand. So over 5 duels, you're almost always going to see at least one, if not multiple, and I think on average you're going to see something like 3 or 4 swords against Ishizu. So since she has Dark Elf, which is Shadow, I lead the Dreams monster here. Would have worked out better to play Headhuntress. But definitely want to be careful about playing your stronger cards early. Once I'm in a winning position against Ishizu, I like to play aggressive, because you never know when she's going to top deck one of her stronger monsters, so I don't want to just be playing 1800s and then she just Dark Elfs over me. Or Gemini Elf. Like, she has 2 Dark Elf, 2 Gemini Elf, 2 Mystical Elf, 3 Dunamis, and a few other decent monsters, and she can boost them with Megamorph. It's tricky to play against Ishizu, but there are a lot of things you can do to outwit her. As long as she doesn't play swords, it's pretty easy. Like, I remember when I was practicing Ishizu swords, I won like 20 duels in a row. It's not at all difficult to win against her, it's just difficult to get fast duels. So when she plays swords, and she already has a monster out, it's usually good to set a monster that has an attribute advantage against her tributes. So her tributes are Mystical Sand, Harpy Lady Sisters, and Performance of Sword. The one I was going for there was Harpy Lady Sisters because it's a wind alignment, but instead she went with Mystical Sand, Shadow, and then Performance of Sword is a divine monster, so it's not weak to anything. Thankfully, it only has 1950 attack. Yeah, Watto, I did not find Last Day to be worth it. She doesn't have enough spellcasters for 50 cost. But it's tough to say. I mean, if I had drawn that card in the 314 run, you know, to take out her Cosmo Queen, I would have gotten the record with that run, so... I've just had too many duels with, like, Crush Card or Last Day or Beast King just sitting in my hand. And I really wish I had a Beat Stick instead. Alright, so that drop is sick, because, I forgot to mention earlier that I had a Crush Card drop, but I didn't put it in right away. But this Acid Trap Hole, it only has a cost of 10, and, that can easily make it in, and Acid Trap Hole's really, really good. So here we have the Risky Cocoon lead, where I mean, she can't get over it normally, but if she Megamorphs or swords, you know, there's a lot of ways she can get over it, so I was just hoping she didn't have those cards, and now I have an opportunity for a really, really fast duel. Unfortunately, I get trolled here. Only one card that I can't get over here, and she plays it, so now I have to take an extra turn. I was about to be super mad when this happened in the duel, because I already got swords on the first duel, and I've had runs where I've been in this position with Pugum on the field, and then she plays swords, and then, like, Spellbinding, and then Megamorph Cosmo Queen, and, like, no. But, thankfully, no swords. But yeah, the Crush Card drop, Crush Card's a 50 cost, and it came like right after I'd done a deck edit, so I decided, alright, instead of taking out like 2 beat sticks for it now, I'm just gonna wait until I have more space, and then I'll put it in place of like a drop. Because I have space for a drop right before Chizu, so I put in Crush Card instead. And then I also got an Ultimate Dragon drop on Pisetto, which I think that's really rare, but I don't remember. It doesn't matter because you don't use it. Anyway, another really valuable turn 1 weak Shadow Monster set here. She wastes her Spellbinding on a monster that I didn't really want to attack with anyway, and she destroys her own monster by attribute on this turn. So my luck on Ishizu is quite good. Yeah, I got the actual card, Wada. And I forgot to mention it during the commentary for some reason. But yeah, there are a lot of interesting and or useful drops around this time of the game. One of my previous runs, I got Dark Elf and Crush Card back to back, and then I proceeded to just not draw them ever, and lost like 15 minutes. Yeah, I think it might be a 1. I still have the save file. Yeah, Headhuntress putting in a lot of work in the late game as well. I really like Headhuntress as a card. Just have to be careful to not expect anything of it on Heishin and Dark Knight. It gets kind of beat up there. Optimal to take it out early if you know to replace it with something. So swords again, and I believe this duel works out okay. Or maybe this was... I don't remember. I didn't lose. I was a little scared at this point, but... Yeah, so I was hoping for a tribute there into Mystical Sand so that the Dreams monster would take it out. Instead, yeah, I got a really nice play here, where she has 2 light monsters on the field, and after she megamorphs Mystical Elf, its attack is no longer... or its defense is no longer twice its attack, so then she can attack with it. So she attacks with the Gemini Elf, and it gets, destroyed by the trap, and then Mystical Elf gets destroyed by the alignment. So I get through swords without any trouble. That's the challenge with swords, is just making sure... Oh, my Cocoon. Just making sure she doesn't get Cosmo Queen or like a megamorphed performance of sword or something like that out. If you can survive that, then the actual time lost from swords isn't that bad. But yeah, that Cocoon Dark Hole has happened to me multiple times, and I just never know whether I played it right. Like, you don't want to just hold back Cocoon and then it's not even useful late in the duel. But seeing Cocoon get Dark Hole is just so bad. Cocoon definitely is better on tier 2 than 3 because of this. fact that you need to set it up and has to survive a turn of... magics. Yeah, both of the swords duels, or did I get 3 swords? I mean, I got swords on Ishizu. I didn't get, like, great swords draw luck, but she wasn't able to set up during the swords, so sub 13 Ishizu was great. So I've basically saved, like, 5 minutes on tier 3 already on, like, what I would expect a decent run to get. So at this point, I can kind of sense the finish line. Haishin is not too difficult, although I've gotten trolled by him quite a bit. Just unlucky, I guess. This time, I have a bit of a better deck. I put in, like, all of my light monsters, and then try to throw in a beat stick or 2. And then my hourglass that I took out before, I don't remember what I took it out for, and then I don't want treasure chest in the deck because he's got a bunch of fiends, but I had that Guardian of the Throne drop earlier. So yeah, pretty good deck for Haishin, and it's unlikely to take a loss or a really slow duel here. He has 2 swords instead of 3. So we do get off to kind of a slow start. But then Dark Knight is like the most variance of the whole run, so even though this run is like well ahead of record pace, there's still a reasonable chance it falls short. Yeah, this guy has 3 Raigekis, so we put anti-Raigeki back in. 2 swords, 3 Megamorphs, tons of Fiend monsters. Love when that happens. But he does have one particularly dangerous non-Fiend monster, which is Mask of Shine and Darkness. It's a 1 tribute, 2000 attack divine monster, and the problem is he's got that card, Megamorph, and then once he powers that up, nothing in your deck can get over it except for, you know, Crush card, Fiend's Hand, Beast King. And even if without the Megamorph, the only card that can get over it is Jirai. So that's generally how you lose to this guy, is he plays swords, and then with swords out, he's able to tribute for Mask of Shine and Darkness, and then Megamorphs it, and you just die. He has a lot of monsters, a lot of, you know, a decent number of non-tribute monsters, and then, you know, Raigeki, so he can kill you pretty quickly if he does get the advantage. I'd really like to have anti-Raigeki there. So this duel went pretty poorly for Haishin. Yeah, I had one duel in my, like, 326 practice run that lost, like, 7 minutes to one Haishin duel because he, like, played 2 swords and he played 1 swords and then I expected him to have another one, so I didn't want to play any monsters because playing monsters is what triggers swords, and he had like 1,000 life points, so all I needed to do was draw something with 1,000 attack or more and just win instantly, rather than like playing a 500 and attacking twice and triggering swords after the first attack, and I just could not draw a beat stick, and then he ended up setting up on me, and it was stupid. I probably could have played it better, but lesson learned, don't short yourself on beat sticks, don't try to get cute with your deck edits. But honestly, getting a duel even as bad as this one is pretty rare against Haishin. You just have such a massive advantage in terms of your monsters and alignments. He can be a bit annoying with his Dreams monsters, because he has 6 of them, and he can Megamorph them, and your shadows just get instantly destroyed. And your shadows are, like, your best cards. But you take out all of the low attack shadows before you basically replace them with your lights. And then you have to watch out for Toon Alligator, which trolled me a bit on the last duel, because that... he can attack with it, because its defense is exactly twice its attack, rather than more than. But, I mean, generally he's just defending, and then you can't get over that with your 1600s, or your Dark Fires can just get destroyed, your Dark Fire, so... Depending on how you draw, he can be either really easy or kind of annoying. And one card that I haven't mentioned yet, but you've seen it quite a bit, is Skullingel. 900 attack, 400 defense, light monster. So that's useful for here. It also can make a few big fusions in tier 1. Also the Unhappy Maiden, which you see there, is a card that I normally password in, but I got a drop this run. I really like the value of a 1-cost light monster, because it always goes in for Haishin, and it can be useful in other situations. Yeah, I put in, what, like 5 light monster passwords at the start of the run that go in the deck here, and I think it's worth it. Skullingel is really nice. Well, it's not really nice, but it can be nice with its effect. Its effect is you just draw 1 card, and if you're, like, in the middle of swords and you can't do anything else, then I think it's just worth using its effect. So that's happened a few times on Dark Knight, where I've just used Skullingel's effect to try to get better cards. But I think I will be maybe routing some of the early passwords out eventually, when I do my next route for this game. Because you have 70 duels before Haishin, and that's a lot of opportunities to get light monster drops, or to just get beat stick drops. Like, all you need for Haishin, really, is like 1650 attack or light monsters. It's not like a Shizu, where she's packing Dark Elf and Gemini Elf, and you've got to be drawing your best cards to have fast duels. Now this is a really lucky duel here, where like it could have gone poorly. He has 6 Dreams monsters, and the only things I can really attack with here are shadows. So if he had drawn a Dreams and then like sacrificed it for, you know, Mask of China, this could have gone poorly. Well, it's not a good card. Like, Unhappy Maiden is only good because its cost is so low. Yeah, like I said before, there aren't many good cards with costs below, you know, like 5. So to find one that's usable in some situations at a cost of 1 is quite valuable. If you're playing this game casually, you'll eventually get to a stage where you don't need to have low-cost fillers. Yeah, 3 really good duels in a row after that slow swords duel. You've seen a little bit of Raigeki and swords, but it's usually much worse than this. Like, you haven't seen any of the swords into unbeatable tribute monster setups, and you won't see any of those this run. Having said that, it is not that uncommon to have a run like this where you dodge all of the major risks in Tier 3 and Dark Knight. Like where you don't take a loss, or you take one loss. So I like playing for that luck. Just putting in a lot of beat sticks, rather than putting in cards like Last Day of Witch, and... I mean, I like putting in multiple crush cards, but like in this run, I don't feel bad about my decision to delay putting in the second one, because it would have just been such a messy deck edit, and I would have been down a beat stick. Of course, you can always optimize your deck around specific drops at specific times, but it's a nightmare to try to practice that and execute it well. So yeah, 2:45:41 entering Dark Knight, a sub 46-minute Tier 3, that's insanely good. Now, Watto's Dark Knight split was 20 minutes. He had like a 250 Haishin, and then he got wrecked. 25-minute Dark Knight I've never seen, but I definitely wasn't feeling that secure going in. I mean, this guy is just, he can destroy you in every way. Like, at times, Dark Knight will seem really easy because he just won't summon his monsters. And this is, you see how my deck capacity I've exceeded my deck capacity because of the edits that I made earlier with the drops, so I'm able to correct it fairly quickly, but that's the problem with adding drops, is you're gonna have situations like that where you can't add what you want because you haven't routed it. Anyway, like this guy, he has a little bit of everything, and sometimes it just works out nicely that he doesn't play his bad combinations. Other times it's like, wow, this guy is impossible, how do you beat him in 15 minutes? So he's got really strong monsters, Reflect Bounder, Guardian of the Throne Room, Invader of the Throne, Jirai Gumo, which he will delay until, like he's played everything else, because it has such low defense. He treats it as his weakest monster, and then he can tribute for a bunch of monsters that are actually not that threatening, and that's often what you're hoping for, is that he just tributes instead of building up a field of 4-star monsters. But really what's dangerous is he's got 3 swords, 3 Dark Hole, 3 Raigeki, 3 Change of Heart, 3 Brain Control, 3 Megamorph. And you just can't prepare for all of this. So I was hoping for him to run that Dungeon Worm into my Yamatano and win by alignment, but it's so hard to predict against this guy because of all of his threats. So here I'm just employing the strategy of ending my turn immediately when I'm under swords, because I have some protection on my field with the Pugum. And if I were to just summon more monsters, I would lose time to watching them get destroyed. so you can see my pace of play slows down a bit here. I'm a bit nervous because the run is good, but also I'm trying to, like, decide, like, how am I gonna handle these difficult situations. There, that tribute could have been, like, 2 of his 3 tributes I would have gotten over with Hit Huntress there, so a bit unlucky to run into the one that I couldn't. And I'm just so nervous about getting, like, Raigeki or Change of Heart here, because then I just lose. Just hanging on by a thread in so many of these duels. And then, you know, because he has so many strong 4-star monsters, I'm like, and he's versatile in terms of his attributes, it's not always easy destroying them. Thankfully, your wind monsters are pretty effective, because he's got so many earths. So here we see the late Jirai Gumo, and this happens quite often because he has 3 of them, where he plays a bunch of monsters that you can get over with your normal beat sticks, and then when you're about to win, and he throws out the Jirai, and then another Jirai. God, that's the worst, is like, you find a way to destroy one Jirai, and then he plays another one, because he's been holding back all of them. And then, like, Megamorph Jirai. Like, here is where I think it is optimal to figure out a way to add your Pyros. Like, that Fire you drop, I probably should have added that, but like, my deck capacity management was already, a bit out of line because of the Crush card drop, so I didn't bother with it. Yeah, I mean, I've got 3 Pyros. I always put in Flame Viper, Darkfire, and Dragon Piper for Dark Knight, but I think adding a 4th Pyro is worth it because of how you can get double Jirai and then, you know, Monster Tamer as well. I don't like leading Pyros when I don't have that many of them, because he's not that likely to play Jirai turn 1. I like to hold them back. But obviously if you have multiple, then it's nice to set one. And, maybe not turn 1, but... yeah, it's a better set than, like... a normal beat stick. So I have to attack with Mechanical Chaser because of this. Neo doesn't have enough attack. If you get any wind drops, like Blue Winged Crown or Skull Redbird, those can be really useful here because you can just attack. You know, if they have... well, they can't get over this, but they can get over his other cards. And they can do pretty good damage. So this was an annoying position. I don't think I had a way to win this turn, because I didn't have any shadows. Sometimes it's kind of hard to think in this position, but yeah, 100 life point short. And it's so scary, because of how often you can just get, you know, something like that, and then if you don't draw something, and then you just die, I think it's 100 life points left. So I actually had a few duels like this on Dark Knight. I think the 4th and 5th duels were similar to this as well. Like, oh shit, I'm about to die from the most winning position you can have, and then, oh yeah, I got a second Crush card drop. Good, sure, glad I put that in. Like, this happens pretty often on Dark Knight, where duels will go on like that, and then he pulls out the Jirai, and you need to draw an out. I probably would have... I might have been fine anyway, if I just waited for him to tribute, and then, like, Yamatano would have gotten over his, you know. If Dark Knight was smart and didn't tribute his... If he didn't tribute at all, like, if he had no tribute monsters and just had, like, more 1500 attack monsters, he would be so hard to beat. It's when he tributes like that you're like, oh, thank you. Because, I mean, this is pathetic, right? 1600, 1300 Fiend. You've got, like, 20 cards in your deck that can get rid of that. So yeah, this worked out nicely, playing for the change of heart, and putting myself in a winning position here. Could have been pretty bad if I hadn't played the trap. The second swords on Dark Knight. And again, I've got a strong monster on the field. He can't get over it with anything except Jirai, which would be very unfortunate. So instead of just playing more monsters, I end the turn. And now that he's played something, I decide to play a monster, but I probably should have just ended the turn there too, since he can't tribute for something that gets over Mechanical Chaser. I just was like, I don't want to lose here, so I'm gonna play it safe. So I should have played that. So I went for the Crush card there because if that had been, I think the other card it could have been is Destroyer Golem, then I wouldn't have had to play, I would have saved a turn because I didn't have anything that could win me the duel without the Crush card, so I like that play, even though it can waste 4 seconds, because you're in a winning position anyway, you probably don't need the Crush card on the next turn. That's what I don't like about Crush Card, is how often it just, you don't have a 1500 attack monster to destroy. It just feels so bad having that dead weight in your hand. Love to see Megamorph turn 1, because it's just one more card in his hand that can't be Raigeki or Change of Heart or Swords. The rare late-game Hourglass effect. Hourglass is mostly just a normal light monster at this stage to protect against enemy fiends, but I really like when you can set Hourglass and then protect it with a trap and then activate its effect turn 2. I need to do that play more in the early game. I missed that play once or twice this run. Good old Dragon Piper, which I've never... It has so many uses, and I've never actually been able to use it when it's most useful. Like, turn one Dragon Piper into, you know, something that barely can't get over it. So Dragon Piper's another card that I might want to take out. But I want to, if that's the case, I'm going to have it as a backup if I don't get any Pyro drops, because I definitely want 3 Pyros for Weevil. Dragon Piper's probably the 3rd best Pyro you can put in, but not necessarily worth a password if you get drops. Alright, so last duel. Really good starting hand. Setting a Wind Monster is great, because of all of his Earths. Change of Heart. Not too scary here, since he's already down to 1 card, and I have lots of outs to this. But I can die if I get unlucky. Like a Change of Heart top deck. And it turns out he actually had another Change of Heart, and now he has nothing. So this was an interesting turn right here. Since he's out of cards, I can go heavily on the offensive here. But I gotta be careful because I have 2,800 life points, so... because I drew Mechanical Chaser, and he stole my Light Monster, I can't actually get over both of his monsters. Darkfire can't get over Reflect Bounder, and Mechanical Chaser can't get over Skullangel, and I really don't want to have my monster destroyed. So I have to do an unusual play here, where I just Crush card the Reflect Bounder. And very happy to have gotten the Crush card draws that I did on Dark Knight, because this was a bit of an awkward 5 duels against Dark Knight. It could have been a lot worse if not for Crush card. And that is GG. Definitely had my fair share of misplays and slow duels, but this is better execution than my older PBs. And got some good drops, managed the deck reasonably well, my menus were pretty fast. Just was an idiot and forgot to reset the 5th duel on Seeker because I was mad. That is the silliest mistake, probably. So I stopped the timer a little bit late here. The actual time is 3:02:43. But doesn't matter that much in this game. As you can tell from watching, there is a ton of RNG, and you can go from being 5 minutes behind to 10 minutes ahead, and you just gotta roll with it. Definitely do not want to run this game expecting to get clean, perfectly executed runs with duels constructed to your liking. You're going to have multiple really bad duels in just about every run.